then you're more prone to develop certain health problems as well. So there are many things that people do that are acts of violence that are normally not thought of as acts of violence. Good. So the thing about violence is that it's very broad. It's much more than just me assaulting someone or injuring someone or killing someone. It's a much broader concept. I'm reminded of what the scripture says. It says sin is lawlessness. And of course, breaking the law, the assumption is that you have committed a violent act if you break the law. And so I want to say again that people who are mentally ill are much more prone to be the victims of violence rather than the perpetrators. And as I said before, there are many other factors that contribute to violent behavior other than just mental illness.
What are some of the other factors, Dr. Poe, for example, that would contribute to mental illness outside of violence?
Okay. Well, I want to make a few comments about factors that puts a person at risk of committing a violent act. For example, if a person has a past history of violence, that puts a person at risk of committing a violent act, whether the person is mentally ill or not. If a person is a substance abuser, as we said earlier, that puts a person at risk of committing a violent act, whether that person is mentally ill or not. If a person has a personality disorder, that is a typical pattern of interacting with other people that's usually maladaptive, such as a paranoid personality disorder, such as a borderline personality disorder, and almost any other type of personality disorder puts one at risk of being violent. Now, especially if the personality disorder also involves another mental disorder, then that puts that person at fairly high risk of engaging in some type of violent behavior. Another factor that increases the risk of violence is excessive stress, especially the stress of being homeless, the stress of being divorced, the stress of losing a loved one due to death. These are the stress of unemployment. These are factors that increase the risk of a person being violent. Of course, poverty is another factor. So these are some of the other factors that puts one at risk of engaging in a violent act, whether that person is mentally ill or not.
It seems to me that a person who engages in such violence is really, as you've indicated, doing something that undermines him or her without, do they really recognize that? Is that a symptom of violence when you recognize that you're doing something wrong and continue to do it?
Well, I would say that yes. If I'm intentionally doing something that I know is doing damage to me or damage to someone else, then to me that's an act of violence. Let me just say that people who engage in violence are often in a state of intense emotion, and often that emotion is